What's up, guys? We're going to cover acetylene and oxygen today. Cutting. All right. It's one of the first things we'll do when we get back to class. So, a couple things to cover. First of all, the equipment that's used, and I'll have another video here that actually demonstrates that as well. So, kind of watch both videos together. They kind of work together. So, when we're cutting with a torch, all right, this is for cutting metal, really of any thickness. It can cut pretty darn thick stuff. So it's widely used. It's easy to operate, and doesn't require any electricity, which is nice. So your equipment, you have your gas. In this case, it's oxygen and acetylene. We have regulators that kind of control the pressure going from the tanks to the torch. Hoses that carry that gas to the torch so we can cut. You have your actual welding torch as well. Welding goggles and or glasses like these right here. Welding gloves, and you need a spark or something to start that flame. All right. So just so you guys are clear, gas. So we have two gases we're using, and is how this is going to work. The red cylinder and the red gas line is always hooked up to the acetylene, and the green cylinder and the green gas line is always hooked up to the oxygen. The paint on the cylinders usually wears off, so the color may not be on the cylinder as much, but it's definitely on the hoses. Just for cylinders. Now, cylinders have extremely high pressure. We can actually get into how the cylinders are made. It's pretty cool, but they're extremely high pressure and they have flammable gases in them. They need to be handled with extreme care. All right. If that valve on the top breaks, that cylinder is like a rocket. Okay. So it needs to be handled with very extreme care. Cylinders, they do have these valves on top and they are fragile. All right. They have to regulate a lot of pressure coming out and then allow just a little pressure go to your torch. So they're very complex on the inside and they are very fragile. Also, you want to always store your cylinders in the vertical orientation or upright. You never want to have them at an angle or on the side. In fact, we'll even, while they're being stored, we even have to have them chained to something to make sure they stay in that vertical position so wind doesn't blow them over or anything like that. If you ever suspect a cylinder is faulty, we don't mess with faulty cylinders. We'll put them outside. I'll immediately call Air Gas is our company out here. They'll come pick it up and deal with that. So if you're ever nervous about a cylinder or you're hearing a hissing sound that you're not expecting or anything at all, don't mess with it. All right? Out of an abundance of caution, if we are at all suspect on a cylinder or a regulator or any of that stuff, we will get it out of operation, have someone pick it up. I don't fix that stuff. It requires special operation. And then just so you guys know, while we're cutting, we're using a lot more of the acetylene gas than we are the oxygen gas. All right. So we'll go through that stuff more than the oxygen. Let's see. You have a regulator valve on top. All right. You should have two gauges on each regulator valve for this operation. One gauge is going to let you know how much pressure is in the cylinder, or essentially how much gas you have in the cylinder. And the other gauge lets you know how much pressure is going to your torch. All right, so we'll have to use both gauges to make sure we have it set up correctly. It doesn't matter necessarily which one's left or right. Usually the ones with the larger numbers is going to be pressure in your cylinder, and the smaller numbers is going to be pressure at your torch. But they do come in various, like scales and stuff like that. We'll learn to read those individually. Okay, acetylene. First of all, you must always turn acetylene off, on and off before turning oxygen on and off. All right. The typical rule is A before O, and away you go. That's what I've always told, kept it in my head. All right. So when I turn on my gas, I'm going to turn acetylene on first, then I'm going to turn oxygen on. When I turn off my gas, I'm going to turn acetylene off first, and then I'm going to turn oxygen off. All right. Very important, never use acetylene above 15 psi. Will be normally around like 5. All right, but never above 15. And on your regulator valve, it even has at the 15 number, it goes red after that. And so you can kind of get an idea like, okay, that's a warning. Also, keep acetylene away. This is not for stuff like copper or silver. There's a bunch of other metals you don't want to use this with. Creates a reaction that's, I've even read where it could be explosive. I'm not sure about that. But it's just, we're going to use it for steel, just steel. All right, regular, mild steel. All right, the process, and then you can watch the other video. I'll actually demonstrate this as well. This is more of like a little written down process for your information. First thing you want to do always is visually inspect everything. You're looking at your hoses, you're looking at your regulators, making sure nothing's on there all weird. This is every tool, every operation for the rest of your life. You're going to want to do this. Turn regulator screw fully open. So there's a knob in the middle of your regulator that we're going to want to turn that all the way counterclockwise. All right, so that it's fully open. Actually, it's kind of a backward statement, but anyway, there's no pressure coming out of that tank. All right. Once that's set up, we're going to open acetylene first. Always A before O. We always deal with acetylene and then we deal with the oxygen. All right. You never want to turn the oxygen off and have the acetylene going. All right. The acetylene, we only open that valve a quarter to a half a turn. We don't want a lot of acetylene here. All right. Only just barely open that valve. That also allows us to turn it off really quick as well. So that's a safety mechanism. Once acetylene is open a little bit, you can then open your oxygen valve. Slowly at first until pressure comes out of the tank, and then go ahead and crank it open. If you just start cranking it open right away, like I said, those regulators, they're complex and they're fragile. And so you have a lot of pressure coming into that regulator, and over time you're going to wear out that regulator. And you could even, even kind of the glass on the regulator could even pop and blow out sometimes if it's a really faulty one. So just barely crack the oxygen, see the pressure build up on that regulator, and then go ahead and open it all the way. So now that you have both things open, the cylinders are open, but no gas is coming to the torch. We haven't opened that part of it. All right. We have a couple little control knobs on our torch. We're going to turn the acetylene control knob just barely open, like a 16th of a turn. All right. And then you could even rub the torch along your arm or something like that, or along your hand. You could feel a little gas. All right. At that time, we'll take our spark and we'll go ahead and light our torch. And we should have this slow kind of flame coming out, and you should see a lot of black smoke. All right. So then is what we want to do. We want to continue to open our acetylene valve until the black goes away. There's no more black smoke, and we just have a roaring flame. All right. Once we have that, we'll slowly open our oxygen. Again, very little oxygen. All right. Give it maybe not even a quarter turn. All right. And then as that starts, you'll see those two gases combined, and you'll start getting a little more controlled and focused flame. Now, with your acetylene torch, with the cutting torch part, there's typically a third valve that kind of combines those two gases. All right. You'll then slowly open that valve as well, and then you should see again, if you look at your torch, a more focused flame. All right. At that point, you really want to just turn your valves, typically the oxygen valve, until you get that really tight blue cone on the middle of that flame. Once you get that tight blue cone, that's really small, maybe a centimeter or so, quarter inch, then you're ready to go ahead and cut. All right. So you have that set up. You have this really tight flame right there. Everything's going good. You're going to go ahead and put your torch on top of your metal, and you're going to preheat your metal. Your metal is going to start to get red. And once it gets kind of molten red, you go ahead and squeeze that trigger. That lets a ton of oxygen go through. All right. And that oxygen burns super hot. It's actually that's going to cut your metal. At that point, while you're squeezing that handle, you're going to slowly move your torch around in whatever pattern you want to cut. And that should be good. All right. It does say here, you may hear a pop when you break through the metal. On thicker metals, as you're preheating, sometimes when that oxygen comes through, you'll blow through that metal. You'll hear a little pop. That's normal. It could be a little startling if you're not aware of it. So just keep that in mind. Then you can just go ahead and start cutting. Once you're done cutting, unsqueeze the trigger. A before O. Turn acetylene off first, then turn oxygen off. Then we'll actually go through a process where we'll bleed the lines a little bit, and then what they call purge the lines, and then you're ready to go ahead and put your torch back away. Last things, just some things to be aware of. Torch, the floor needs to be clean below you. You're cutting down into a piece of metal, and you're going to have drips of molten metal drop on the floor. So we don't want any residue, wood, or anything that's flammable below you. As always, proper clothing must be worn at all times. Nothing synthetic. We do have, if you're doing a lot of cutting, we do have, jackets for you to wear, protect your arms and stuff. Proper eye protection. This is very, very bright, so you want to shade your eyes because you can get those like sunspots on your eyes without the proper eye protection. You can either use a welding hood and you can adjust the shade, the darkness of the lenses, or these sunglasses are specially designed for torch cutting. We should always have a fire extinguisher present at all times when we're cutting. Mine, the one right by the door, we know where it is and it's ready to go. And then again, never use acetylene above 15 psi. All right, typically around 5 psi. Thicker materials might go a little higher, but never above 15 psi. The reason for that's pretty complex. I'll cover that probably in class if you guys are interested. All right, I hope that made sense. Go ahead and watch the next video for the actually cutting of stuff, and that should cover all of our stuff. All right, guys.